So, I don't know if we're reading from any particular part. I thought I brought my glasses up. I might have left them in the car. Can I give you the key? It's either on the centre console, on the dash, or on the passenger chair. If it's not there, then I must have. So I don't know where we finished off here. Out is Srila Prabhupada's business plan transcendental question. First, Srila Prabhupada's books are by nature transcendental. They are transcriptions of his personal kirtan. Anyone who reads these books contacts a vibration saturated with spiritually uplifting potencies, words vibrated by a pure devotee of Krishna. Regarding the special nature of such words, Prithu Maharaj says, Dear Lord, you are glorified by the selected verses uttered by great personalities. Such glorification of your lotus feet is just like saffron particles. When the transcendental vibration from the mouths of great devotees carries the aroma of the saffron dust of your lotus feet, the forgetful living entities gradually remembers his eternal. The forgetful living entity gradually remembers his eternal relationship with you. Devotees thus gradually come to the right conclusions about the value of life. My dear Lord, I therefore do not need any other benediction but the opportunity to hear it from the mouth of your pure devotee. That was the first reason why Prabhupada's books are transcendental. Tomorrow will be the second. So Prabhupada's transcendental book distribution key. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 19, text number... Which? 3. 3 and 4. 3 and 4, okay. So 3 doesn't have a purport. I'll just do that myself. I'll maybe just do both of them myself because we're a bit short of time, but we can just follow it through. Om Namo Bhagavate Uttamastlokaya Nama Acharya Lakshana Shila Vartaya Nama Upasiksitatmana Upasita Lokaya Namaha Sadhu Vada Nikashanaya Namo Brahmanya Devaya Mahapurushaya Maharajaya Nama Iti. Translation, let me please your Lordship by chanting the Bij mantra Omkar. I wish to offer my respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, who is the best among the most highly elevated personalities. Your Lordship is the reservoir of all the good qualities of Aryans, people who are advanced. Your character and behavior are always consistent, and you always control your senses and mind, acting just like an ordinary human being. You exhibit exemplary character to teach others how to behave. There is a touchstone that can be used to examine the quality of gold, but you're like a touchstone that can verify all good qualities. You are worshipped by Brahmins, who are the foremost of all devotees. You, the Supreme Person, are the King of Kings, and therefore I have my respectful obeisances unto you. Yat tad vishuddhanubhava matram ekam sotedisa dvasta guna vyavastam patyak prashantam suriyo palambanam Hyanama Rupam Niraham Prapadje. Translation: The Lord, whose pure form, Satchidananda Vigraha, is uncontaminated by the modes of material nature, can be perceived by pure consciousness. In the Vedanta, he is described as being one without a second because of his spiritual potency. He is untouched by the contamination of material nature, and because he is not subject to material vision, he is known as transcendental. He has no material activities, nor has he a material form or name. Only in pure consciousness, Krishna consciousness, can one perceive the transcendental form of the Lord. Let us be firmly fixed at the lotus feet of Lord Ramachandra, and let us offer respectful obeisances unto those transcendental lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, appears in various expansions, as stated in Brahma Samhita 539. Ramadi Murtishu Kalani Yamena Tistan Nanavataram Akarod Bhuvaneshu Hitkintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Parama Pumanyo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead Govinda, who is always situated in various incarnations such as Rama, Nrsimha, and many sub-incarnations as well, but who is the original personality of the Godhead known as Krishna, and who incarnates personally also. Krishna, who is Vishnu Tattva, has expanded himself in many Vishnu forms, of which Lord Ramachandra is one. We know that the Vishnu Tattva is carried by the transcendental bird Garuda and is equipped with different types of weapons in 4 hands. Therefore, we may doubt whether Lord Ramachandra could be in the same category, since he was carried by Hanuman, not by Garuda, and had neither 4 hands nor the Shankha, Chakra, Gada, and Padma. Consequently, this verse clarifies that Ramachandra is as good as Krishna, Ramadi Murti Shu Kala. Although Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, Ramachandra is not different from him. Ramachandra is unaffected by the modes of material nature, and therefore he is prashanta, never disturbed by those modes. Unless one is saturated with love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot appreciate the transcendental value of Lord Ramachandra. One cannot see him with material eyes. Because demons like Ravan have no spiritual vision, they consider Lord Ramachandra an ordinary Kshatriya king. Ravana therefore attempted to kidnap Lord Ramachandra's eternal consort, Sita Devi. Actually, however, Ravan could not carry off Sita Devi in her original form. As soon as she was touched by Ravan's hands, she gave him a material form, but she maintained her original form beyond his vision. Therefore, in this verse, the words Pratyak Prajantam indicate that Lord Ramachandra and his potency, the goddess Sita, keep themselves aloof from the influence of material energy. In the Upanishads it is said, Yam Ivais Sa Vrinute Tena Labhya, the Supreme Lord Paramatma. The personality of Godhead can be seen or perceived only by persons who are saturated with devotional service, as stated in Brahma Samhita 538. Manjana Jurita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achinta Gunaswarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamam Bhajami. I worship the primeval Lord, Govinda, who is always seen by the devotee whose eyes are anointed with the pulp of love. He is seen in his eternal form of Shyamsundar, situated within the heart of the devotee. Similarly, in the Chandogya Upanishad, it is stated, Etas Tishro Devata, Anena Jivena. In this verse of the Chandogya Upanishad, the word Anena is used to distinguish the Atma and Paramatma as 2 separate identities. The words Tishro Devata indicate that the body of the living entity is made of 3 material elements, fire, earth, and water. Although the Paramatma enters the heart of a Jivatma who is influenced and designated by a material body, the Paramatma has nothing to do with the Jivatma's body. Because the Paramatma has no material connections, he is described here as Anama Rupam Niraham. The Paramatma has no material identity, whereas the Jivatma does. The Jivatma may introduce himself as an Indian, American, German, and so on, but the Paramatma has no such material designations, and therefore He has no material name. The Jivatma is different from his name, but the Paramatma is not. His name and he himself are one and the same. This is the meaning of Niraham, which means without material designations. This word cannot possibly be twisted to mean that the Paramatma has no ahankar, no I-ness or identity. He has his transcendental identity as the Supreme. This is the explanation given by Srila Jiva Goswami. According to another interpretation given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Niraham means Nir Nishchayena Aham. Niraham does not mean that the Supreme Lord has no identity. Rather, the stress given by the word aham proves strongly that he does have his personal identity, because nir not only means negative but also means strong ascertainment. Om Jnanatamandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurimlitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangamalagayate Girim Yatripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Sadigura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We'll just read those two translations again. Let me please your Lordship by chanting the Bij mantra Omkar. I wish to offer my respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, who is the best among the most highly elevated personalities. Your Lordship is the reservoir of all the good qualities of Aryans, people who are advanced. Your character and behaviour are always consistent, and you always control your senses and mind. Acting just like an ordinary human being, you exhibit exemplary character to teach others how to behave. There is a touchstone that can be used to examine the quality of gold, but you are like a touchstone that can verify all good qualities. You are worshipped by Brahmins, who are the foremost of all devotees. You, the Supreme Person, are the King of Kings, and therefore I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Text 4. The Lord, whose pure form, Satchidananda Vigraha, is uncontaminated by the modes of material nature, can be perceived by pure consciousness. In the Vedanta, he is described as being one without a second. Because of his spiritual potency, he is untouched by the contamination of material nature, and because he is not subject to material vision, he is known as transcendental. He has no material activities, nor has he a material form or name. Only in pure consciousness, Krishna consciousness, can one perceive the transcendental form of the Lord. Let us be firmly fixed at the lotus feet of Lord Ramachandra, and let us offer our respectful obeisances unto those transcendental lotus feet. Interesting term used in the first verse, Aryan. So, of course, there was a certain nationalistic group back in the 30s and 40s who used that term Aryan race, and they had a very superficial, materialistic estimation of what that meant. Basically, somebody had decided it meant that they should be a certain height, certain colour of skin, certain colour of eyes, certain colour of hair. And it's just somebody's idea of what is some kind of perfection. But what if everybody who had dark hair and who was short decided, no, we're the Aryan race, and gave them a doing, gave them a thumping, then, what? So it's just some kind of materialistic thing. It's interesting though, because often when you're out preaching Krishna consciousness, people say, oh, I'm not interested in religion. Religion's caused more wars than anything else. But that last World War wasn't caused by religion. It was caused by science, wasn't it? Because they had this concept that life comes from matter, and they were thinking they could manipulate matter through how these wars which are apparently in the name of God, aren't there? Like the Gita, battlefield of Kurukshetra, that's a different thing. And of course, the principle of defending, like devotees are not considered to be pacifists or non-violent, but they're considered to be tolerant. So that means we tolerate insults to ourselves, but we don't tolerate insults to another devotee. For example, if someone makes some, so anyone here ever done martial arts? What's the first thing they teach you? Before that, they teach you how to run. Because the best thing about martial arts is to avoid altogether. And so generally they teach you how to run away. They say it's better to do that because you don't know. Even if you're a very well qualified martial artist, I had a friend who was very well qualified, but the local hoodlum of the town trapped in an elevator once in a shopping centre because he heard he had achieved quite a high status in his martial arts training. So he said, okay, so do you want to have a go then? But my friend Kevin said, he says, no, I concede. He knew that even though he was very well trained in martial arts, that if this other guy got the first hit him, then the game was over. So the first lesson he learned was to avoid. So this is typically what the Kshatriyas do. They use diplomacy. People have got this concept that Kshatriya means that you just know how to fire a bow and arrow or a gun, or you know how to wield a sword, and you know how to use your hands and your feet. So some people who are very much on the kind of Sudra platform, that's maybe the lower end of Kshatriya, where they think, well, I'm a Kshatriya because I like to beat people up or something. It's nonsense. Kshatriya means, what does the word Kshatriya mean? Yeah, to protect people from hurt, isn't it? And they are considered, what part of the social body are they considered? If the Brahmins are the head, the Kshatriyas are the arms. Yeah. So they have this term, taking up arms. So usually you use your arms to defend yourself, or sometimes to defend by attacking. But on the higher scale, the Kshatriyas, it's not just simply a military force. It means governance, diplomacy, using tact, things like that, keeping peace in society, engaging the Brahmins, supporting the Brahmins so that they can perform activities which are beneficial for humanity, not just actually humanity, but for all living beings. So much so that when there was disturbance in the kingdom, if there was a drought or a flood or any kind of disturbance, then the Vaishyas would go to the Kshatriya rulers and say, you're not doing your duty, why is this happening? If you're performing sacrifices properly, if you're making sure these sacrifices are going on, then we wouldn't be having these natural disturbances. So of course nowadays nobody's performing any sacrifice. You might even find the devotees who were preaching, they might find themselves, sometimes people say, oh, you're just parasites. But actually the devotees are the opposite. They're the only ones who are doing the yajna, which is benefiting everyone else. They don't even know it. But the devotees they know better than to tell them you're the parasite. If it wasn't for us Hare Krishnas, then Kali Yuga, the effect of karma would be much more upon your head. And this is confirmed. We mentioned this a few times in class that one Prabhupada, the second last Prabhupada, surely the effect of all the sinful activities which is going on in the planet for a long time, surely this must have a reaction coming in Prabhupada's years. And the only thing which is holding it back is the Sankirtan movement. So don't think we're doing something small. Sometimes we go outside and maybe do a small score, but don't think it's a small thing, because this is holding back the tide of Kali Yuga. every effort, just like that. The story of in Holland, right? In Netherlands, there was a boy who put his finger in the dam and he saved the nation because the dam was holding back the sea and there was a small hole and the sea started to come through. Now, if he'd have walked by and thought, well, it's nothing, eventually that water would have come through and then cracked the whole dam open and flooded everywhere. But he seen it, stuck his finger in, and he became a great hero. So we may think our endeavour is not very big, but we're actually saving humanity. In this hour of need, is not sometime in the future, it's now. We're in Kali Yuga. This is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. Anyone disagree? Mm-hmm. So, if you do it, that'll prove it. And if you don't, you accept it. So the Kali Yuga, age of quarrel and hypocrisy, is characterized by, can anyone name some of the characteristics of Kali Yuga? Quarrel.
Increased taxation.
Increased taxation, yeah. Short lifespan. Unlucky. Always disturbed. Lazy.
Short memory.
That's getting to it. Lazy. I think maybe somebody told the story of the king who wanted to find the two laziest persons, and you know that story, right? So he put them into a house, and he set the house on fire, and all these, he said, anyone who's lazy, come and I'll feed them. So all these so-called lazy people came, but when he set fire to the house, they all ran out except for two. And then the two who were left there, they were burning, and one of them said to the other, he said, oh, my back is burning. He said, well, turn over. The other one said, well, turn over. He said, I can't be bothered. So this is like us, we're so stubborn and lazy, we don't even realise it. Sometimes we're not physically lazy, but mentally lazy. And stubborn. We don't want to change the status quo of our conditioning. Just like in society, sometimes a revolution will disturb the status quo to try to make some improvement. And sometimes that improvement is for a particular class of people who are maybe getting neglected. And somebody has an idea, and then because those who are living off the fat of the land, they like the status quo. They don't want it to change, so there's some skirmish goes on. So similarly, our conditioned state of mind, the mind is comfortable in the status quo, even if it means we're going to suffer more in the future, even if it means we're suffering now, but still don't change. This is what I know, I'm comfortable in my own ignorance. So, but this Krishna consciousness is a spiritual revolution which will certainly challenge the status condition. So in this verse here, we're talking about identity, ahankara. So what's it telling me? Niraham. So Niraham, just like Nirvana, we've heard this term Nirvana, or Nirguna. It means the end of all material existence. Can anyone give me the translation of different translations? That's Niraham. Yeah, so just like the word Vana means forest, right? And in the fifth canto also we'll be reading the forest of material enjoyment, or did we read that already? Read that one, yeah. Forest of material enjoyment. So this means coming out of the forest of material enjoyment, nirvana, and means the end of the entanglement of material life. But that's only the beginning. Perhaps in nirvana, because it's said that even if one achieves impersonal liberation, which would be consistent with in nirvana, we experience eternality. So because material pleasure is simply relief from material distress. So when one achieves nirvana, then they do attain a type of bliss, because that pleasure from being relieved and released from material entanglement is far greater than any material pleasure they've had. But still, it's not active pleasure, because there's no personal reciprocation between the jiva and the supreme personality of Godhead. So this is also in the Ishopanishad. This verse says, Tad ejiti, tad najiti, tad juri, tad vartiki, tad antarasya sarvasya, tad usarvasya bhayataha. The Supreme Lord walks and does not walk. He's within everything, he's outside of everything. He's sleeping in class, but yet he's awake in class. It's okay, you're not alone. I don't blame you. He's within everything and yet he's outside everything. He's far away, but yet he's very near. So this is the inconceivable nature of the Supreme Lord, that he's within everything and yet he's outside of everything. The whole world is resting on him, but yet he's not part of it. Everything rests on Krishna as pearls strung on a thread. So when you see somebody with a nice pearl necklace, then you may appreciate the pearls, but nobody looks to see what kind of thread is that, holding that together. But without the thread, the pearls have no potency to display themselves. So this is Krishna's wonderful quality, that he manifests things in the material world, and we take advantage of these, and we falsely think ourselves the doer, the owner, the controller, and he allows us to do that because that's what we want. But without that thread through it, then nothing is possible. We depend on Krishna for everything. Even the atheists depend on Krishna for the sun to rise, for the water to fall out of the sky, for the air which they breathe. So in Kali Yuga, it's because people are short-lived and their memories are very short-lived. Previously, the sages used to speak and they would hear, and then they would be able to repeat because they were Shrutidar, they remembered everything. Whatever they heard, they remembered it, and they could perfectly recite it back to others. And nowadays, though, we have to write everything down and we have to record it because we know, even sometimes you've experienced it. Someone's giving class and then something strikes you, you think, oh, that's really good, I'll remember that, that'll make a difference. Within 2 seconds, it's gone again. But at the moment when you got that little flash realization, you thought, oh, that's so clear, I won't forget that. And then 2 seconds later, what was that again? So we get that, so we have to write things down in Kali Yuga. And Prabhupada said that memory in Kali Yuga means pen and paper, or telephone, or tablet, or whatever kind of method you have for recording. And then repetition is the mother of learning. So because Krishna is unfathomable, then it means we never come to the point where we know Krishna, even though we may know more and more and more. It never comes to the point where, okay, that's it, I know everything about Krishna now. What else is it to do? And we look for something else to do. It never comes to that point. So therefore, if we're reading Krishna conscious literature and we think, I've read this before, there's not something else to read, then it means our heart has become dull. We've allowed our consciousness to see it in a material way. Same with chanting Hare Krishna, same with kirtan, with class. We never get tired of prasadam, do we? It's not like prasadam, no, not prasadam again. Can't we have some boga for a change? Can't we have lumps of sin? Not prasadam. So it's all prasad actually. It's all Krishna's mercy. And we can recognize that if we're not particularly encouraged or enthused, inspired by reading or by hearing or by a particular service, then it's simply because there's something in our heart which is conditioned. And Prabhupada says that devotees naturally be attracted to doing certain things. We like to do certain things and we don't like to do other things. But when it comes to Krishna, it says the devotees should work in such a way that they're aiming to become equally enthusiastic about any service. And we can be, but what it is because we are so attached to the result, then if we're not so good at something, or it's uncomfortable to us in some way, then we don't want to do it. We want to do things which will bring us some kind of glory, or recognition, or some kind of benefit, some kind of gain. And if we do something and we're not getting a gain which we think is for our prestige or our material benefit, we think, well, this is a waste of time. But this is material estimation. So any activity, any endeavour in Krishna consciousness is never a waste of time. Anything else other than endeavouring Krishna consciousness is a waste of time. Because we're simply Yogya by Vishnu. Work done as a sacrifice to please Vishnu must be performed, otherwise karma bandhana, bondage to action in this material world, brings reaction. So therefore the best use of time is to utilise it in Krishna's service, whatever that service may be. And we don't have to worry about what is our service because it's called prescribed duty, just like Arjuna, he was given a prescribed duty. And this is how we attain love of Krishna, by performing a prescribed duty. Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita, it's better to perform one's own duty imperfectly than another's perfectly. It's like, say someone's told to clean the temple and then someone's told to shovel snow, then they can say, well, I'm better at shoveling snow, so let me do that instead of cleaning the temple. So the person who's organised that may say yes, or they may say no, because they may think this person needs to clean the temple for a particular reason. Or they know that the person they're going to have to work with don't get on, so they don't put them in working together. Sometimes that might be a consideration. But if we just keep on arguing, no, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, then Krishna actually wants to see us doing what we're prescribed. And generally we don't get given something to do which is just going to make us uninspired. But still, there has to be some work from us. And this is where the laziness of Kali Yuga comes in our heart. We don't want to change things. But at the same time, we recognise we need to. So sometimes we just have to be brave enough to allow ourselves to be used as Krishna's instrument. And when we do, then that's when things really start to happen. If we limit ourselves by only doing what's within our sphere of understanding or sense perception, then that's all we do, we just limit ourselves. But if we put ourselves in Krishna's hands, then he takes us beyond the range of our senses, beyond the range of our mind. Sometimes people get into mind-expanding drugs in the hope to extend their sense perception or find some kind of higher meaning or higher type of elation, etc. But actually, as a devotee, we don't want to do that, because the real expansion of experience is the ongoing process of surrendering to Krishna. And then, as they used to advertise in the early days in ISKCON, no more coming down. anything material which takes us up, we have to come back down again. So we could take the shortcut and you just take some intoxication and then you might see something which is a bit unordinary, extraordinary, but then you come back down again. And then if you try to stay up all the time, you just wreck yourself. And as the old saying goes, check yourself before you wreck yourself. So we have to, if we want to get some higher realization, higher understanding of life, then there's a process and it takes some time. Therefore, Rupa Swami says that patience is one of the qualities for one to become successful in Krishna consciousness. So we shouldn't be tempted to take a shortcut, because a shortcut never gets you there. The lessons which we learn by going through the process of giving up our material identity and reviving our spiritual identity, these are lessons which Krishna personally deals to the devotees. So there's the cat, sometimes it's seen to carry a rat in its mouth, or sometimes it's seen to carry a kitten in its mouth. So from a distance you might think, oh, it's the same thing, but it's not, because the kitten's experienced protection and affection of the mother. The mother cat is taking the kitten and keeping it out of harm's way, putting it here because it was going to go somewhere dangerous. It picks it up and puts it somewhere. But the rat is experiencing something very different. Is experiencing the jaws of death. So similarly in the material world, the devotees may appear to be doing material activity, but it's under Krishna's direction, it's under Krishna's care. When the devotees go through some difficulty, then they're going through that under the hand of Krishna, so they come out the other end more connected to Krishna, more realized. But when the materialists, they suffer, they're only getting a karmic reaction. And then often they take shelter in something material, which is going to then create a further reaction in the future, so they compound the problem. So therefore the devotees, they just patiently accept the reactions which come and go, knowing that tamsta tekshvashka bharata, we have to be tolerant, because shitoshna sukha, the happiness and distress are like the disappearance of winter and summer seasons. Just like yesterday morning, very early, there was black ice everywhere around here, and it was a blizzard. Some devotees had to call it off because they were facing a blizzard, doing door to door. The blizzard at the top of a hill in a housing scheme. So this is a great challenge, and it comes to the point where the books are going to get damaged, people won't answer, no one stand at the door, so you find something else to do, some other service, if it's not going to give up. But when the non-devotees, they have, so when the devotees, they try to continue in their service despite the difficulties, then that attracts Krishna's attention. Even though Krishna is all attractive, he's attracted by the devotees' endeavour to serve. So if we do that, and we continue to do that, we continue trying to hear, even though we're chanting and our mind is crazy sometimes, personally speaking, I don't know about anyone else, but you chant your japa, and then a few rounds later you realise you hadn't heard the name, your mind was just somewhere else. And what do? You just bring it back. Even if, because we've already been wandering for millions of births, what to speak a couple of rounds. So just bring it back. Krishna so kindly says, wherever the mind wanders to, bring it back. Even if it goes to the most cesspool of the universe, your mind goes to the most degraded thing, just like, forget it, that's not me, I'm pure spirit soul, I'm going back to Krishna. We just take your consciousness back there. It's not that Krishna is disgusted or disappointed in us. Krishna is always hopeful for the living entities. He's always enthusiastic to make facilities for the living entities to come back. And that's because Krishna's love for the living entities is eternal, it never dies. He's with us as a Paramatma. In the purport here, Prabhupada was saying that the Jiva may identify as Indian, British, American, Eskimo, camel, insect, elephant, blade of grass, shark, tree. We may identify with all these things. Yes, I'm such a nice tree. Look at my branches and look at my fruits. We may be thinking like that about such nice fruits. Everyone's coming to me. We still want to be the center of attention. Whatever species of life in, we're still trying to compete with God, even though we're suffering, we're so restricted. But so we may have this temporary identity which we associate with. But when we keep bringing our mind back to what is our real identity, then we can understand the Lord's identity is eternal. So just like Prabhupada saying, the Paramatma's identity is not niraham, it's not without identity. He has identity, it's not material identity. It's not that we have American Paramatma, or animal Paramatma, or Indian Paramatma, or Scottish Paramatma, or Yorkshire Paramatma. We have the Lord is constant, that is the real status quo, never changes. So there's Niraham, and we have, so Aham means I am, Aham Mameti means, anybody? Aham Mameti?
Me and mine.
I mean mine, I am this body. We see ourselves and we think, oh, I'm so nice looking, or I'm such an ugly looking toad, whatever we think, but we're not either of these things. We're a spiritual being, we're not this body. This body is just some manifestation of material elements, some bones. You know, if someone removes a bone from our body, and then maybe 10 years later we see it there, we don't think, oh, that's me. Or the last body we had in a previous life, if someone was to dig it up and say, there you are, that's you. You would think, take that away, that's mine. We don't want to identify with that body that was gone decades ago. But this body we've got is the best one we've ever had. And this is really me. All the other ones weren't really me, this is me. But it's a wonderful machine made of material energy. And yet the scientists have the audacity to state as if and there's no creator behind it. They can't create even one cell, what to speak of a body. And by their own estimation, by their own information, they say the universe is a certain amount of years old. Is it 4 billion or something? Whatever it is, it's a certain period of time. This is their estimation. And by the theory of chance, then, or probability, then there's not enough chance motions to take place which would even manifest a one-celled living entity, because the cell is so complicated. And back in the time when Mr. Darwin thought that their understanding of a cell was very, very limited. But now, with the power of microscopes, they can see how complicated even one cell is, more complicated than the whole telephone network system of London. So how can something like that just come about by chance? If somebody woke up one day, I mean, of course nowadays not so many people have landlines, but certainly if somebody woke up one day and they say, oh, how did this telephone network system come about? It must have come about by chance. Nobody did anything to manifest it. We'd think, this guy's pretty deluded. He must be really blind. So if we were to think we're this body, then how did we even create this body? Our parents don't even know. They know what they did to create it, but they don't know how it was created. It's such a wonderful thing. So who can actually go back and say when it was created? So this is Life Comes from Life. There's a very nice book by Srila Prabhupada called Life Comes from Life. Life doesn't come from dull matter. There's no example of it. sometimes they combine something to make some kind of reaction, but still that's not. Nature's test tube is already providing everything. So this knowledge of spiritual life, the spiritual source of life, and the Supreme Being who has an identity which is never changing. This is given in these transcendental literatures. And if people just read these books, then they will come to understand who they are, because you just spoke about Aham Mameti. The next one is Aham Brahmasmi, which means
I'm spirit soul.
I'm spirit. One is I am this body. The other one is I am the spirit. So living entities, they have a burning desire to know who they are, but sometimes they just put it off. Everybody asks these questions some point in life, but because they don't get any answer, they just give up. They think, oh, don't think too deep, you'll just hurt your head, or you'll get depressed. Stop thinking too much. You're overthinking it. Just go on with it. And you think, yeah, go on with what? Why? Why do I want to go on with what? For what reason? So this is encouraged in the Vedic literature, Aham Brahmasmi, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now that we have this human form of life, it is time to inquire. And for those poor living entities out there who haven't found the answer, or who have been dulled down so they don't even search any longer, then Prabhupada wrote these books so that they can start to question. Just by touching the book, they get purified. And sometimes even the person we give the book to, they're not the person that reads it and becomes a devotee. Often this happens. Like our friend Prabhupada Bani, his mother, who at that time was probably in her 60s, she was out shopping, came back with a second canto Srimad Bhagavatam, thinking, no, my son's into all sorts of things, he might like this. And then we were all around at his house, we were all like crowding around this Bhagavatam, checking out the Sanskrit, word for word, and the translation and the pictures, which are windows to the spiritual world. So certainly, looking back in our own personal experience, we can think that's going to happen for everybody else. These books will find their way to somebody. Prabhupada was on about blanket distribution, not giving out warm cloths or food bags, but just like when you cover something with a blanket, it's not just covering little bits and bobs, it covers everything, so just distribute everywhere. So this is our thing. We're not so much interested in this fundraising. Fundraising is there so that we can spread Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, we could find other ways to make loads of money if we really wanted to. But whatever money comes in, someone probably said that if someone gives $1 million this morning, then we'll spend it for Krishna before the afternoon. Because we can spend it unlimitedly for Krishna. We're not attached to it. Just like someone working in a bank, they're working with money all day long, but they don't think, oh, then I'll just have so much money here, I'll just stick a few in my pocket and nobody will notice. The person in the bank doesn't think about it, it's not their money. So the devotee thinks it's not mine, it's Krishna's. It's Krishna's car, it's Krishna's buildings. We look after everything because it's Krishna's. Material consciousness is, I don't look after it because it's not mine. It's like anyone ever worked for a company. I used to work for a company and they had company cars. And there was one guy, when his ashtray was full, he just put it on the floor. And when I used to fix his car, sometimes, first thing I'd do is I'd vacuum it all out, and his floor was like full of, I don't know what kind of state his lungs were in, but the floor was full of cigarette doubts, and the ashtrays were all bulging all over. I was thinking, if this was your own car, you probably wouldn't treat it like that. Because it's not yours, then they're not interested. And it's a fact, when you see his own car, it's very nice and clean and tidy. So we shouldn't be thinking like that with Krishna's property. Well, it's not mine, so I don't need to take care of it. If there's litter around, we pick it up. This is Krishna's temple. If something looks like it's out of place, or it's going to be a problem, then we do something about it, or bring it to Krishna, somebody's attention. So we see everything in relation to Krishna, and the same as Lakshmi, just like we have our prayer. So this Lakshmi is to be used in Krishna's service, not that we want Lakshmi for ourselves so we can put our feet up and just drink coconut water all day, or massage each other's feet. So it's like Prabhupada said, We can chant Hare Krishna and live in a mud hut. We're happy with that. But for the sake of preaching Krishna consciousness, then who would come to a mud hut? Some people might, but people in general wouldn't. They wouldn't be attracted to that. So these Krishna conscious literatures are there to engage their mind and senses in hearing about Krishna, and if they give some donation, we take that and we use that to print more and to create facilities for people to come and chant and take prasad. Chanting, dancing and feasting, this is our mission. This is our lifestyle. We invite everyone to come and join it as well. Someone was complaining to Prabhupada, "Oh, you're just doing this." Prabhupada says, "So come and join us then. While you work so hard in the factory all day long, just come and join us. You too can do this." But because they don't want to give up the lifestyle, then they're stuck. So it takes time. To begin with, people don't want to give up their attachments. Just like ourselves, we're giving up some things, but we're still holding on to some things. So similarly with them, they may be just a few rungs down the ladder. But as soon as they get a book, they give a donation, they get some prasadam, they're starting to climb up the ladder. And it's just a matter of time. This agyata sukriti means service performed unknowingly. Even if someone doesn't want to take a book and they want to just give a donation because they think we're a worthy cause, that's fine. That's agyata sukriti. That benefit, they do that a few times, comes to the point where they'll start to think, so what's it all about? I'll maybe take a book this time and give it a read. It happens. Okay, so we'll just stop there. Again, we'll get any questions or comments. So the distribution of these books is simply to remind people of who their real identity is, and Prabhupada is so expert at doing that that even ourselves begin to remember. It's going to be the key.
Jai. 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 His good. Hari Hari Bol. His great Prabhupada Prana Prabhu ki. Jai.